And we just heard there the ruffles and flourishes, and hail to the chief. And the King and Queen approaching by car, and the trumpets announcing their arrival. And now we move into the two national anthems, the United Kingdom and the United States. But first, the King and Queen get the chance to meet all those members of the President's cabinet and senior representatives, and he wasn't going to meet his own staff there. But the President has a chance to meet the King's staff now. King's Private Secretary, the Ambassador, Sir Christian Turner, and now the two national anthems.
Ladies and gentlemen, the national anthem of the United Kingdom, followed by the national anthem of the United States.
Present! Present! Arch!
With the conclusion of the two national anthems, the commander of troops will come forward and invite the King to inspect the Guard of Honour.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated.
And the weather really hasn't been kind to this arrival. You can tell that the rains are there, and it's very different from the gorgeous weather in the afternoon when the King and Queen arrived unofficially yesterday. King and the President now heading off to this inspection. And they'll be escorted by the Commander of Troops, Colonel Thomas Kilbride. And you'll see he wears the light blue band around his cap as a member of the infantry. And the light blue trousers I was telling you about, and the dark coat to remind the sun bleached the trousers of the Continental Army during the Civil War. And responsible for all of this preparation is Company Sergeant Major Nicholas Rocky, who is the Company Sergeant Major of the 3rd United States Infantry Regiment, the Old Guard, as they're known, the Honor Guard of the United States Army. Passing the Army, then passing the United States Marines as they look straight into the eyes of the King as he passes. The colours of the 6 parts of the United States Armed Forces. These colours sit in the White House, in the West Wing, and are present when the President makes most of his decisions. The United States Navy, the United States Air Force, Space Command, as I say, for the first time ever at one of these parades, Space Force have formed part of this guard. And then the Coast Guard. Coast Guard's responsibility is enormous for the coastline of the United States, particularly with the President giving the instructions that he has for the protection of the borders of the United States. The United States Marine Band is performing with the national anthems we heard, and they'll complete their music with Stars and Stripes Forever, which is a march written by John Philip Sousa. And then the President of the United States will read a few words of welcome to the King and Queen. And remember, this is the head of state of the United States welcoming the head of state of the United Kingdom, with all those shared elements of history which hold as a purpose for this state visit the 250th anniversary of independence.
Are you going, all right? And the Old Guard Fife and Drum Corps
which directly take us back and transport our thoughts to the time of that Declaration of Independence. They paraded also outside Windsor Castle when the President came over on his state visit. And their unique music. They have the 10-hole fifes, and each of the drums is made by hand and tensioned by handmade rope. So keeping the traditions going, and let us enjoy it as the President is standing to watch this particular part of a reminder of those 250 years and the links between the two nations.
Ceremonial. At ease. Stay at ease.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
Thank you very much, everybody. What a beautiful British day this is. And it really is. Your Majesties, members of the British delegation, friends, service members, and distinguished guests, welcome to the beautiful White House. Great honor to have you. Melania and I will never forget the spectacular honor Your Majesties showed us during our extraordinary visit to Windsor Castle last September. Now it is our tremendous privilege to host you, and you're going to have a wonderful short stay, but stay nevertheless. Then you're going over to Congress, and you're going to make a speech that's going to make everybody very envious of that beautiful accent of yours. Very elegant. He's a very elegant man. Here in the shadows of monuments to George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, honoring the British King might seem an ironic beginning to our celebration of 250 years of American independence. But in fact, no tribute could be more appropriate. Long before Americans had a nation or a constitution, we first had a culture, a character, and a creed. Before we ever proclaimed our independence, Americans carried within us the rarest of gifts, moral courage, and it came from a small but mighty kingdom from across the sea. For nearly 2 centuries before the Revolution, this land was settled and forged by men, women who bore in their souls the blood and noble spirit of the British. Here on a wild and untamed continent, they set loose the ancient English love of liberty and the Great Britain's distinctive sense of glory, destiny, and pride. And that's what it is, glory, destiny, and pride. The American patriots who pledged their lives to independence in 1776 were the heirs to this majestic inheritance. Their veins ran with Anglo-Saxon courage. Their hearts beat with an English faith in standing firm for what is right, good, and true. In recent years, we've often heard it said that America is merely an idea, but the cause of freedom did not simply appear as an intellectual invention of 1776. The American founding was the culmination of hundreds of years of thought, struggle, sweat, blood, and sacrifice on both sides of the Atlantic. Fate drew a long arc from the meadow at Runnymede to the streets of Philadelphia that ran through the lives of people born and bred on the British code that no man should be denied either justice or right. American patriots today can sing, "My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty," only because our colonial ancestors first sang, "God save the King." We see today a living symbol of this centuries-old bond, just a few dozen feet to the left where I stand. There, Her late Majesty, Queen Elizabeth, an incredible woman who I had the privilege of getting to know. Queen Elizabeth II, very, very special woman who is very greatly missed on both sides of that mighty Atlantic. Long ago planted a young tree. It was a very young and beautiful tree, and look at it now. It's tripled in size and tripled in strength, very much as our nations have even more than tripled. Like our nation itself, it was laid with British hands but grew in American soil. Today it stands tall and proud, reaching ever higher. And this morning it reminds us that the mightiest of trees, like the greatest of nations, must be anchored by the strongest and deepest of roots. In the centuries since we won our independence, Americans have had no closer friends than the British. We share that same root. We speak the same language. We hold the same values. And together our warriors have defended the same extraordinary civilization under twin banners of red, white, and blue. My wonderful mother, Mary MacLeod, was born in Stornoway, Scotland, the Hebrides, and that's what they call very serious Scotland. There's no question about it. Some places they say, well, it wasn't really Scotland. The Hebrides, that's real serious Scotland. That's where they had their greatest of warriors, their greatest of warriors. She came to America at 19, met my incredible father. We loved him so much. We all loved him. We loved her. We loved him, Fred, and they were married for 63 years. And excuse me if you don't mind. That's a record we won't be able to match, darling. I'm sorry. Just not going to work out that way. We'll do well, but we're not going to do that well. 63 years. And my mother, I just see it so clearly. She loved, and I told the king this, she loved the royal family, and she loved the Queen. And anytime the Queen was involved in a ceremony or anything, my mother would be glued to the television, and she'd say, "Look, Donald, look how beautiful that is." She really did love the family, but I also remember her saying very clearly, "Charles, look, young Charles, he's so cute." It's my mother. My mother had a crush on Charles. Can you believe it? Amazing how, I wonder what she's thinking right now. But beneath those beautiful flags, 8 decades ago, Prime Minister Winston Churchill and President Franklin Roosevelt famously met on a ship in the North Atlantic to outline a vision for the free world after World War II. That understanding of our nation's unique bond and role in history is the essence of our special relationship, and we hope it will always remain that way. The ship where the two great leaders met was called the Prince of Wales, the very title that His Majesty the King held longer than any other individual in British history, and he held it with great pride and respect. It's said that when Prime Minister Churchill first met this future king many decades ago, he was so impressed, he made the statement, "He is so young to think so much and so well." And the bust of your great Prime Minister rests proudly again in the Oval Office. We're very proud to bring it back. We brought it back. Throughout His Majesty's life, the world has witnessed that same thoughtfulness which first struck Britain's greatest Prime Minister. His Majesty's intellect, passion, and devotion have been really a blessing to the British people, but not only to his own country, but to the cherished bond between the United States and the United Kingdom. And I am very certain that it will continue that way long into the future. In a few hours, His Majesty will stand in the heart of the United States Capitol as the very first British king ever to address a joint session of the United States Congress. So he's going to be addressing Congress, and I'm going to be watching. I was thinking of going, but they said, I don't know, that might be a step too far. I would love to go. It's not supposed to be protocol, but I would love to be with you. But there, the direct descendant of King George III will speak to the direct successor of the very body that gathered in Independence Hall on July 4th, 1776. If John Adams and George Washington, or the King's fifth great-grandfather, could see that sight, they might be absolutely shocked, but probably only for a moment. Surely they would be delighted that the wounds of war healed into the most cherished friendship. Think of that very, very long ago difficult war, and yet those wounds did indeed heal into the most cherished of friendships, most cherished. They would be moved beyond words to know that the soldiers who once called each other Redcoats and Yankees became the Tommies and the GIs who together saved the free world as brothers in arms and brothers in eternity, and nobody fought better together than us. If they could see us today, our ancestors would surely be filled with awe and pride that the Anglo-American Revolution in human freedom was never, ever extinguished, but carried forward across centuries, across oceans, and across history until it became a fire that lit the entire world. So today we look back on 250 years. Let us remember what has made our countries the two most exceptional nations the world has ever known. And together let us go forward with even stronger resolve to carry on our sacred devotion to liberty and to the traditions of excellence that have been our shared gift of all mankind. Your Majesties, thank you once again for making this important visit. We are so honored. May God forever bless the United Kingdom, Great Britain, and Northern Ireland, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
A remarkably warm welcome to the King and Queen from the President, expressing the links of liberty between the two nations, referring back to the Declaration of Independence in 1776, and looking at the ways in which the armies that fought against each other in the American Revolution were the armies that fought together.
Ladies and gentlemen,
against tyranny
please rise
in the
if you are
Second World
able
War.
for the conclusion of the ceremony and departure of the official party.
So the King and Queen will now be with the President and First Lady to witness a march past of the Guard of Honour, and 500 representatives of the armed forces will come past the King and Queen in salute in what's called a pass in review. And the Union flag and the Stars and Stripes carried there respectively by infanteers of the Old Guard, as the King and Queen are taken up to the balcony to witness this march past, and the trumpets give the fanfare for that. With the fanfare done, the march past will begin. And it is these very armed service personnel who, in their way, carry the history of the United States from that early start in 1776 to recognise also, as the President reflected, the traditions that are shared by both nations and by both the relative armed forces. And they've been enhanced by countless operations together in times when the United States and the United Kingdom have been allied. But throughout the special relationship of 250 years, there have been difficulties, there have been moments, not least the 1812 war between Great Britain and the United States. Also, moments of trade disagreement in the 1920s more recently. And perhaps now challenges that would not appear to have been referred to in that incredibly welcoming address that the President gave to the King. And I think the King may be asking why the President's mother thought he looked so cute when he was younger. But the President's mother was a great collector of newspaper cuttings, and doubtless, for the President of the United States, he would imagine that his mother would love to have the newspaper cuttings that have come out over the last 2 days, as the first representatives of the armed forces passed beneath the King and the President on that path immediately outside the South Portico. And first of all, representatives of the 3rd United States Infantry Regiment, the Old Guard, the Honor Guard of the United States Army. And also the Commander-in-Chief's Guard will pass by. Now, the King has been an armed forces champion all his life, served in the Royal Navy, served as a para in the Army, and was a pilot, so he has eyes for certainly 3 of the 6 services that pass by. But of course the United States have 6 arms to their armed forces, and including Space Force for the first time. Recognising that the President is saluting the colours there, which we saw earlier on. They live in the West Wing and are covered in those ribbons that are each of them battle honours given by successive presidents and Congress to each arm of the armed forces. It's a wonderful bird's eye view for the King and Queen, looking down on the troops as they march by. Always following in order of precedence after the United States Army are the United States Marine Corps. And the United States Marine Corps provide the pages who constantly look after the President and make sure that when he's in the West Wing, which he will be later on with the King, one of the Marine sentries will be on duty and other Marine sentries around that area. And after the Marine Corps comes the United States Navy. Of course, in the United Kingdom, the Navy takes precedence. But here they come third, and then the United States Air Force. Space Command, or Space Force, as it's known, and then finally the United States Coast Guard. I'm sorry we can't bring you a picture of the troops as they march past, but I can assure you that immediately below our picture are those troops, and here come representatives of that great army, the Continental Army. And that tradition that was so bravely facing the British Army at battles like Lexington and Concord, and ultimately leading to the success and the defeat of the British interest. And George III was told his time as the monarch of the Americas was at an end. So with the last of these groups of troops passing by the President and First Lady, there are the fifes and drums, who we saw parading earlier on as the President stood to witness them. And I'm afraid that's a wobbly camera, but at least we got you a sight of what it is that the King and Queen are being shown. It's the biggest ever parade given to a sovereign as they fly past. Well, going from the Continental Army of the 1770s to the Air Force and maybe even Space Force, we just couldn't see them up in the stratosphere, giving a salute to the King and Queen as the President and First Lady lead them now into the Blue Room, which is where presents will be passed from head of state to head of state. But they leave our sight now, and this parade outside on the very damp south lawn of the White House is at an end. And all those senior dignitaries now move into the White House. And after the presentation of gifts have taken place, there will be more presentations in there to the King and Queen. And then later on this morning in the United States, the King will be escorted by the President to the West Wing, where all the decisions are made, which is to the left of our picture as we look at the building. It is where the Oval Office is and where the President and his executive do their work in leading the United States. And then later on today, the King will go. It was interesting to hear the President wanted to be there too, but constitutionally it's not possible for the President to accompany the King when the King goes to address Congress at the Capitol building, which is behind us to the right. The vast Capitol building that is the focus of the American Constitution. As the last of the banners